Okay, I'm gonna start this video off by saying that if you enjoy Jedi Fallen Order, chances are that you're gonna enjoy Jedi Survivor because it's pretty much the same game except expanded upon. And when it's all working, it's actually pretty incredible. But you see, those are the key words there, when it's all working, because sadly, this game's PC port is fucking dog shit. And I can't even speak to the extent of how bad it can get because I'm actually one of the lucky ones. For example, there are people running this game with a 4090 and a high-end CPU that can't even break past 30 to 40 FPS. Let me repeat, on a 4090. No matter which way you try to spin it, there's no fucking excuse for that. Now, I'm running an all AMD system with a 7900 XT and a 5800X 3D. And believe it or not, I get above 60 FPS, between 80 and 100 with a mixture of high and epic settings at 1440p while using FSR. Although I'll still get drops down to 40 or mid 50s, and it's still playable, but point is that I'm still dropping about 60 fucking frames. Now, I can deal with frame drops, that's something that doesn't bother me too much. The thing I can't deal with though is stutters. It is strong in this game. The shader compilation issues that existed in Jedi Fallen Order are still very existent here in Jedi Survivor, and if anything, they are much worse because the game is larger in scale, and it really pulls you out of the experience during exploration. It just sucks. There's other things I can speak on that other people are dealing with, such as things like audio desync, graphic settings not changing the performance, visual bugs, crashes, as well as people not even able to get past the loading screen. There's more issues, and if you want more details, I'd recommend watching Digital Foundry's video on it. So simply put, I cannot recommend this game for PC users because your mileage may wildly vary, and it should honestly be a fucking crime that the game was released in this state. And the thing is that I don't blame the developers because I'm sure they saw these things and they didn't want to release the game in this state, but it was higher ups pushing the game to the deadline. And that's usually the classic recipe for a dog shit launch. And the thing is, this seems to be a trend when it comes to PC games where the optimization is just terrible, and it's gonna continue if people keep doing this, as in they see a game, they buy it, realize it's not working, and then they keep it in their library with the thought process that, hey, it'll be patched down the line, right? That compliance with this practice makes companies very comfortable in selling you broken ass products, because at the end of the day, they're still getting and keeping your money. Like, let me put it this way, the company does not deserve to keep your hard-earned cash after selling you a broken fucking product. If you buy something and it's not working, refund it. Get your money back. They can have it when the product is actually working. And it's a real shame that I have to say this because underneath these performance issues, there's actually a good game. It's just marred by technical horseshit. For example, the combat in this game is actually pretty fun. Very similar to Fallen Order, except just expanded upon. You have different playstyles that you can go for. You have your regular lightsaber, the double-sided saber, a blaster and saber, and my two favorites being the dual-wielding sabers and the crossguard, which kind of feels like a greatsword and a bit more technical to use. For those of you that are unfamiliar with Fallen Order or the combat in this game, it's very similar to a Souls-like where you have to pay attention to enemy attacks, when and when not to dodge, when to parry, and when to retaliate. Except it feels a lot more fast-paced and you have force powers that you can use, like pulling enemies towards you, pushing them, and so on. And to continue from that, it just feels good when you're slicing a bunch of enemies or doing finishers. It's just really cool. As for the difficulty, I'd say this game feels more accessible than any Souls game that you would probably play, although it depends on what difficulty you're playing on. I played on the hardest difficulty called Jedi Grandmaster, and it definitely feels doable, but there were moments where it felt a little unbalanced, like situations where I was getting one-shot by basic attacks from a boss. But hey, I got through it, although I'd probably recommend to play on the difficulty below it if you want something that is more challenging but feels reasonable. I do commend the game for its difficulty modes though, because speaking for myself, I typically don't like when games have difficulty modes, because I find most games do a bad job of it by just making enemies really spongy and dealing a bunch of damage, causing combat situations to become very tedious. Although the difficulty modes in this game don't affect how tanky the enemies are, it just affects their aggression, the damage they deal, as well as tightening up your parry timings, but that's pretty much it. There are times where I think the enemy aggression is a little overwhelming at higher difficulties, but other than that, I think this is a step in the right direction for difficulty modes. As for bosses, I'd say my feelings on them are pretty mixed. There were some of them that I thought were pretty cool and actually fun to fight, although some of them were just kind of brain dead to fight, and then other ones just had really weird attack patterns that were a little strange to telegraph. Either way, there wasn't a lot of them in the main game, and I didn't really get stuck on any of them, so it's kind of whatever for me. I'd say the combat mainly shines when you're fighting a group of enemies, parrying attacks, deflecting blaster bolts, using your force powers, and just slicing through everything. That's when it's the most fun for me. But something that does feel lacking for the combat is the enemy variety, and it always saddens me when I see this issue in games. But aside from this and certain aspects, I think the combat is pretty fun. As for the world and level design, I'd say that the game is a lot grander in scale. It still has a more linear path and a bit of that Metroidvania DNA, where you go in a direction, you realize that the path is blocked, so you go somewhere else, you get an ability, you come back through any shortcuts you opened, and find a new path forward. Although I will say that the path forward doesn't always feel clear, and there was many moments where I had to open the map to just see what direction I should be heading into, which kind of took away from the flow of exploration a bit. Although I'd say this time around, the game has a bigger emphasis on platforming. You'll be doing a whole lot of wall running, climbing, jumping, and so on. The thing I appreciate about it though is that it doesn't feel like the game is just playing itself. There are times where you actually have to avoid hazards and kind of time everything, which I think is a step in the right direction for these big budget storytelling games, where you're normally just holding in a direction to climb up a fucking cliff or something. It can still feel similar to that, just not as restrictive. And there was a certain set piece and part where you're doing platforming that I thought was really cool, but I don't want to spoil it for anyone. When it came to puzzles, I never found them too hard or too easy. They were just serviceable. None of them really stuck out to me like they did in Fallen Order. It's just a small combination of physics-based puzzles or picking up objects and throwing them into something. So nothing really special, but even then, this is kind of whatever for me anyways. Something I enjoyed about the exploration was the loot that you picked up, because it's primarily cosmetics, and this is a breath of fresh air for me where I can just pick something up and think to myself like, ooh, this looks nice, and not have to think about the stats or if this is good for my build or something like that, because I've honestly gotten tired of games trying to become some pseudo RPG when it doesn't need to be. So this is a big thumbs up for me. So overall, I think the exploration was pretty enjoyable. It's just the thing that really held it back for me was the performance, because it was usually stuttering whenever I was discovering something new, which would really pull me out of the experience and make me not want to explore anymore, which is a damn shame. As for the story, I don't want to say too much because I don't want to spoil anything, but overall, I'd say that I enjoyed it. And just when I thought it was gonna end, it just threw something more at me. And I'd say the story's themes surround growth, self-reflection, not losing your way as a person, and the whole idea of family. I think the performance from the actors was well done, and I enjoyed the writing overall. You'll definitely still love Cal in this game, but I definitely really enjoyed Grease and Seer this time around. But while I still enjoyed the story, it was pretty predictable. Still a fun experience though. So overall, there was definitely aspects that I enjoyed about the game, but it was really held back by all the technical issues. And in good conscience, I cannot recommend anyone to purchase this for the PC platform, as of now anyways. And if you do, you're pretty much acting as a paying beta tester. Keep your money. So I would recommend the console releases, but even then, I'm hearing things like the PS5 is also dealing with things like frame drops, except I don't know how severe it is in comparison to the PC. Although I don't believe it's dealing with any shader compilation issues or stutters. It's just really sad that I can't confidently recommend the game when I know it's actually pretty good, and it's just held back by technical aspects. Anyhow, thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. Peace.